I have done in over a year and a half. So thank you for all of you who are here in person. I want to say that there's about 20 people in person at the convention center, 20 community members. We have 44 people joining online, as well as two members of television stations, also joining us. The meeting is being recorded on MS Teams, and we'll post our recording on the website tomorrow. Okay. My name is Maritza Mercado Peachin. I am a Deputy Director with the Department of Planning and Development Review, where I oversee the Office of Equitable Development. We will have joining us a couple of council people that represent the districts around the convention center, the Coliseum area and the convention center. So that will be Councilperson Robertson, Councilperson Jordan, Councilperson Lambert. We have a bunch of staff here with the planning department. Will Palmquist, who's manning our computer, he'll be managing all of the virtual participants. We have Yesenia Revilla, who will be helping the Q&A with our in-person participants. We have the acting director of the Department of Planning and Development Review, Kevin Vonk. And then Alex and Emily, who are two planners with the planning department as well. So thank you so much for all of you for being here today. I'm kind of nervous, excited to see how it works to have in-person and virtual at the same time. Tonight, we're going to have a presentation about the small area plan. It's a draft. Remember, everyone, it's a draft. Part of it is that we bring you things when they're not completely finished so that we can get input. And then we change it based on what we think was consensus input that we received. And that will go back to the Planning Commission and the Council for adoption. A version of this presentation was shared with Planning Commission and the City Council's Organizational Development Committee earlier this month. We're going to do in-person and MS Teams Q&A, so we'll see how that flows together as we learn how to do this hybrid meeting all together. The presentation is available. This presentation that I'm giving, as well as the small area plan, are available on the city's website, which is shown on this slide. During the presentation, if you're here in person, you can write comments on the feedback form that's here. You can just take notes as we go along and turn that into us. If you're joining virtually, you can visit our website and click on the general comment form survey and fill out that same survey virtually. And then there's also the full plan is loaded on this platform called Conveyo, where you can comment like directly on the platform. Basically, the message is we want to hear from you. We want your comments, whatever way that is easiest for you to give them. So the purpose of this whole plan is that this area that we're in right now is the downtown, and we have about 26 acres that are owned by the city, and it's vacant. A lot of it is vacant land, like the Coliseum, parking lots, underutilized property. And so we want to drive business outside of the regular 9 to 5. We want to increase attractions, build on existing attractions as well. There's a lot of really strong attractions in this area, the convention center where I'm standing being one of them, but also the Valentine History Museum, the Maggie Walker House, the Hippodrome, the National Theater, the Carpenter Theater, the November Theater, on and on and on. There's so many wonderful attractions here. So we want to build off those great attractions, increase the tax base downtown, and connect to other parts of town as well. This process started after the Navy Hill proposal didn't pass council, and the council passed a resolution asking for a small area plan. The planning department began last June with a community meeting where we shared examples of revitalized downtowns with and without arenas. We had about 1,000 survey results that showed that the community generally supported open space, office, mixed income residential, multimodal transportation, and a gridded street network. Also other neighborhood amenities and community benefits like retail office for local businesses, public open space, and equity ownership by minorities. That survey did show general support for an arena, strong support for a movie theater, and little support. We had asked about at the time about a resort casino. During a second virtual workshop, the city shared 3 framework alternatives, so 3 different layouts of where open space could go and different things could happen. We got about 250 surveys on that one, and a lot of people continue to show support for the mixed use development, for the open space, and then other elements that continue to need further discussion were the city government uses, because at that time we talked about changing where some city government uses could go, and then the bus transfers, and then also the arena were things that people kind of felt like needed more conversation. After that, we had several group interviews. We had about 10 group interviews. There you go. We had about 10 focus group interviews with different stakeholders in this area, including the Historic Jackson Ward Civic Association, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and all of the historic different groups that are cultural and historic amenities in this area. That is how we got to the plan that we're sharing today, the plan that we have, that you guys have a little overview of on your tables. That handout is 2-sided, just so you all know, the big map one. And all of the information that the people in the meeting have today is stuff that's already available on our website. So we get to today, we released the draft plan, which doesn't include an arena, because as you all know, Henrico announced that they are creating an arena. And the idea is to bring this plan forward to council for adoption so that then we can get the ball moving on redeveloping some of these city-owned parcels in accordance with the plan. I want to share some existing conditions and spend a little bit of time on history. The plan includes 8 pages, which includes a really long timeline that shows an overview of the history of this place, and I urge you to look at it. It's pretty easy and simple to read. It provides a really good snapshot of this place. What I'm sharing is just a little bit, barely digging into the surface. This map that you can see on your screen right now shows the urban form. So on top, you can see all those little black lines were parcels of land. That was in 1924. This was the Sanborn map for the area, which is the fire insurance map. And you can see overlaid underneath is the existing conditions. Today, city center, this area of town, is completely unrecognizable from its land use and urban form from 100 years ago. Annexed by the city in the late 18th and 19th, early 19th century, this area blossomed back then due to its proximity to important buildings like the state capitol. And Broad Street became the critical commercial corridor of the area. In the early 20th century, Jackson Ward was created as a political boundary meant to neutralize the new voting power of the recently emancipated Blacks. Jackson Ward and its surrounding areas over the next few decades became a thriving center for Black business and entertainment due to events like the establishment of Maggie Walker's Consolidated Bank and Trust and the opening of the Hippodrome Theater. As segregation and Jim Crow policies expanded, Broad Street became an entertainment hub for white Richmonders, especially from North 7th to North 9th Street, coined Theater Row. And different department stores were also established, like Tallheimer's and Miller and Rhodes. As we move in, so on the bottom of this slide, you can see the population. And right now we're looking in the brown section, 1940 to 1960. And here's some images from that time. During this time, city development expanded further from the original downtown. White residents moved to the periphery, known as white flight. And then from the turn of the century until the 1950s, city center's racial composition shifted from majority white to majority Black. The city's first master plan led to the creation of all Black public housing and the construction of the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike, now I-95. And all of that had a hand in displacing thousands of Black residents and destroying their homes within and adjacent to city center. At the same time, demand for parking increased downtown with the rise of the automobile and the continued white flight to Henrico and Chesterfield. Many buildings, such as the 6th Street Market and John Marshall High School's track and field, were converted into parking garages or demolished and turned into surface parking lots to serve downtown commuters. The growing pace of white flight to the counties had increasingly negative economic impacts for downtown Richmond and the city as a whole, as well as the fact that we being the predecessors of city government, city politicians, destroyed the really intact Black communities. And so there was a lot of different efforts to revitalize this part of downtown through these big efforts like the Coliseum, like 6th Street Marketplace. Ultimately, downtown suffered in the late decades of the 20th century and into the 2000s. Over the past century, communities, homes, and residents were displaced and replaced with large non-residential buildings, and that city center would only be inhabited from 9 to 5. So what happened over a series of many decades through lots of different decision making is that the downtown population, and that's kind of shown in this graphic in blue, with the city center area shown in gray. That whole downtown area was 28,000 people, and then came down to, thank you, water break for those online. That downtown population went from 28,000 people in 1940 to about 9,600 people today. Now, we all know that downtown has had more population, and we have been growing as a downtown. A lot of office buildings have been added and stuff. But the thing is that way back in 1940, there were so many housing units here. Also, people lived in much more dense housing. Like, you had many more children and multi-generational living. And if you think about this area around the convention center today, not very many people live east of here. And it used to be, as you saw on that sandboard map, a very rich fabric of housing. So part of what the city did is that they wanted to attract, they got rid of all the community that was here, and then they tried to attract people to come here through big flashy things like a Coliseum. And so that is something that happened across the country. Richmond is not the only place where this happened. We did this all over the place with highways and coliseums and all these different efforts. And so what we're trying to do with this plan is to bring people back, because people are the ones who make places great. And if you live in a place and you're there kind of through, and people are there throughout the spectrum of the 24-hour cycle, it can start to come back. The population has increased, as this slide shows. Population of the downtown has become, most of the people who've come in have been younger. So if this bar chart shows that the biggest increase has been in 18 to 34 population. The African American population has increased a little bit from 2010 to 2019, but what has really increased more is the white population. So that's kind of where you see more of the growth in the area. Existing plans that we have for the area is the Pulse Corridor Plan and Richmond 300. Both of them call for doing a plan for this area to look at it more closely, kind of acknowledging that 26 acres of land is a whole lot of land that we need to make a good plan for collectively. Our existing conditions for the properties. So the 26 acres that I'm talking about are mainly the parcels that are shown on this screen. The salmon colored properties are buildings that the city owns. The blue are surface parking lots owned by the city, and the purple are parking decks or garages. And so you can see on the right, there is a table that shows the condition of these properties, ranging from good to critical. And these ratings are based on analysis done by the Department of Public Works in the city. So diving into some of these a little bit closer. City Hall has about $51 million of deferred maintenance. And so it's one of the things in the plan is to look at the future of City Hall. That doesn't mean we've decided entirely what it should be, just kind of, okay, $51 million is a lot, and what should the city do to manage that cost? John Marshall Courts is another building that has some deferred maintenance, about $18 million. Theater Row building, that's this one right here, also called the 730 building, has about 11 million, and then the social services building has about 4.5. All of this information and details on all the other buildings are also in the plan, just kind of giving you an overview of what leads to those condition ratings. So all of this needs a plan, and that's what we have created here. And the vision for the plan is to create a dynamic place that attracts residents, employers, students, and tourists, to have a grand park interconnected by smaller open space that are the cultural, recreational, and commercial spine of the neighborhood, new buildings that represent the downtown prominence. This is the hill. So if you build a building on top, it'll have some height and you'll be able to see it from the highway and you'll be able to say there's Richmond. Creating a mixed income community that fosters a diverse community, and also supporting the Greater Richmond Convention Center, the historic sites, the museums, and theaters by adding hotels, restaurants, and new attractions and open space. Looking at the neighborhoods around, this is an upside down view. Most people are used to seeing things with north up. We're looking now with south up. The city center's in the middle. And the great thing about this area is that you have super strong neighborhoods right nearby. Jackson Ward, VCU Health and Biotech Park, the state capitol, the downtown, Monroe Ward, all of these places are their own and they're getting stronger if they're not already quite strong, and they're attracting and adding more people. But in the middle, there's nothing. In the middle, it's a void. And this plan brings together all of those places and adds what each place is looking for more of. So in terms of connecting to all those places, we have the streets that are going to be connected through, Clay Street specifically. And then obviously 8th and 9th, 6th, we're proposing that 6th Street will come through more too. We have open space. We're proposing open space along Clay Street, and I'll go into more detail on that when we get to it. But that we want to connect to some of the great open spaces that we're proposing for the Shockoe Heritage Campus. This idea of decking over the highway to reconnect Jackson Ward, Monroe Park, MLK Middle School. This play through our street network and the way we design the sidewalks connecting all these places, you can kind of start to connect all of the great green space attractions. We have the Pulse Corridor, which already is our BRT. There's been talk for a while of a north-south BRT route that could run 8th, 9th down up through from Chamberlain down to the south side. There's this great bike connections like the Capitol Trail and the Fall Line Trail, which is a bike route that has been proposed to go from Ashland to Petersburg. And then there's also the potential for high-speed rail down at Main Street Station. So we're hoping to connect all of the neighborhoods with better transportation networks that come through the city center. This is an overview of the kind of 5 big components of the plan. One of them is having hotel and entertainment cluster closer to the convention center, and that's shown in purple on this slide. So this plan proposes about 800 hotel units. I just want to note that this image is really just conceptual. The height of the buildings might change, the actual design of the buildings might change, but the idea is to convey like what this area could start to look like. For reference, this purple building is about 20 stories tall, so it is quite tall, even though it looks kind of small when you're that high up. Then we have mixed-use residential. I'll go into more detail, but essentially this could be about 2,000 units of mixed income, mixed-use residential. In the light blue, we have biotech and life sciences, And this will be building off of the strength of the Virginia Biotech Park and VCU Health to add more office space and employment areas for those growing industries. And then we have municipal. This plan proposes evaluating the office space that the city uses in downtown and trying to figure out if all of that office space is necessary in the downtown core and potentially decentralizing some of it. I'll go into more detail on that later. And there's also a proposal for a fire station and potentially a high school. These are some images of what this could look like. These are just kind of illustrative, not necessarily doesn't have to exactly look like this. This plan, which I believe you guys also have before you, shows, I'm going to talk about the street connections that we're proposing. So we're proposing to keep Lee Street dipping down as it does today. Why? Because we think it's a pretty considerable expense to bring it up. And also, once you tear down the Coliseum, there'll be a really big hole. And that hole could be a good place for some parking. And doing subterranean parking and digging is pretty expensive. And since we already have the hole, might as well use it. Knowing that, yes, in the future, we want to have more multimodal transportation options. We already do, but people are still going to be driving to some degree, so we should have some parking. So we are proposing to keep Lee down so that people can access the subterranean parking from underneath, as people used to be able to walk into the bottom of the Coliseum. And then we are proposing that kind of parallel to that, north of those parcels 1A and 1B, there would be a parallel road that will provide access to those buildings. We're proposing that 6th Street would come through all the way to that road. The glass atrium of 6th Street Marketplace would be demolished. Clay Street would be reintroduced through the site. And then Clay Street and 6th Street would be treated as these festival streetscapes where they could be curbless. So then they could easily be closed for some sort of festival, but then they could also operate most of the time as a regular street with cars and bikes and pedestrians and buses. This map also shows activated ground floor. So where you see red, that means those are facades where we're saying that there should be, make sure that there's really good building entrances and windows and doors into that side of the building. That doesn't mean that the other sides don't get windows and doors. That's not what we mean. We're just saying that that side, the side that faces the green space, should especially be activated so that people are looking onto the green space to then help enliven it. So now I'm going to go into some of the elements of the plan. One part of the plan focuses on city-owned assets. And the idea is to intentionally redevelop city-owned property within city center to create walkable, beautiful, and distinctive neighborhoods. As I said, there's a lot of acreage of city-owned land, and we want to efficiently manage that land and facilities. Part of that is done through a study that the city is undertaking right now to evaluate city functions across the city and city space needs. Another is looking at the John Marshall Courts building and evaluating options for the courts building, including renovating that building, rebuilding the courts building somewhere else, or on the same parcel. City Hall, same idea, renovating, rebuilding, or in the same location, or building somewhere else. The Coliseum, we're proposing to demolish it and redeveloping on top. The Theater Row building, as part of that evaluation of the city-owned properties, same thing, looking to see if that property is needed. Same with the Department of Social Services. The Public Safety building, which is shown here on the image, that has already been approved by council for redevelopment. And then looking at the city-owned surface lots and parking decks for redevelopment as well into residential or hotel or office. We're calling for a fire station in the area to meet the demands of an increased population downtown. There is a need for a new fire station, and the fire department would like it to be on roads that are kind of easy in and out access. So that would be 8th, 9th, and Lee ideally. Just as a side note for people who don't know the history of this place, City Center at 5th and Duval there was the first professional African-American firefighters station. There's a placard you can go see. It was the first place where Black Americans were firefighters in Virginia. So this would be kind of putting a new fire station in this community that used to have one. That building was demolished in 1968. Another big part of the plan are these open spaces. The open spaces are the most exciting part of the plan that gets me the most excited because the open spaces create kind of an outdoor living room for the community. And one of them is this large signature open space, which is about the size of a football field, and would accommodate citywide and community events. It would have actually, I have a lot of slides going into detail on how it gets programmed, but one of the ideas is that it would have an urban amphitheater where sometimes it would just be like a regular big open space where you can just have a cup of coffee or meet some friends. But then for special events, you can close the streets. There's a stage that people can tie into, and there could be an outdoor concert. Then there's a series of smaller open spaces. That's number 3 on these. And these are kind of like outdoor cafe areas or areas where the sidewalk is expanded to accommodate extra uses. The open space number 2 could be a linear open space similar to the size of Canal Park in DC. And all of these open spaces would be programmed a little bit differently. So there's the big signature one that would have the amphitheater, but some of the other ones might have a playground or a fountain, just different types of experiences for the different types of people who'd be coming to downtown. So this is a view of that main public open space. This would be 6th Street over on the left of the screen, and at the bottom would be Clay. It could be used every day, an outdoor movie night, for ice rinks, for art festivals, for outdoor performances, for yoga classes. The idea would be that the buildings around this area would kind of frame it and almost create an outdoor amphitheater effect just with the buildings themselves. Another really important element of creating a great downtown is high quality urban design. So the plan has recommendations about how we design our buildings and we design our urban streetscape so that so you don't see parking, so that as a pedestrian you feel comfortable, there's shade, there's things to look at, so that the buildings are designed in ways that address the street with windows and doors and interesting things happening at the ground level, and that you have street trees. There's a bunch of recommendations about historic preservation. This area, even though we did demolish a lot of it, like I mentioned, there's still a lot of different historical assets that we would definitely want to keep that are shown here, among others, not just the ones shown here, but the John Marshall House, Blues Armory, Valentine History Museum are just a few to mention. In terms of transportation, we want to continue to prioritize people over vehicles in the movement through our city. So the plan proposes bike paths on Lee, Clay, 6th Street. It also proposes investigating the BRT on Lee, 8th and 9th. It proposes creating this festival streetscape on Clay and 6th. In terms of transportation, we would want to incorporate bus transfers at the street level with excellent bus shelters. And then also as we look at redeveloping city properties for city functions, including public restrooms, including amenities for bus riders within those buildings. In terms of parking, we would want to encourage shared use parking. This is a cut through of that Coliseum site, and this is the big park. And so the 2 levels of parking that you see are just proposed that could be underneath where the Coliseum used to be. We would expect people to adhere to zoning and park their properties appropriately. and hopefully enter into shared use agreements where like different groups share parking so that you don't build parking that's only used by an office, but the residential people have to build their own separate parking, and then most of the parking's empty most of the time. We have recommendations in the plan related to creating a diverse economy. Those range from clustering and connecting innovation, so attracting science-focused industries and tech-focused industries building off of the Virginia Biotech Park success and VCU Health's growth, and creating more job opportunities for Richmonders. Part of that is the idea of creating a high school in the downtown that could be a Richmond Public School high school that would build partnerships with the adjacent higher education institutions like Reynolds Community College, VCU Health, VUU, U of R, and other life science anchors. And so the idea is that these high school students would be in the mix of the excitement of this new downtown area, and they could potentially begin to further their education while in high school by attending community college, by attending VCU, by hearing from professionals about their paths and kind of what degrees you need to get in order to enter the emerging tech jobs that we know are coming to our community and are already coming to the country. Another idea is expanding our tourism and connecting and enhancing all of the tourism destinations. A big part of that is that hotel. Having more hotels downtown helps this building, the convention center, attract more conventions. It also helps the General Assembly and VCU Health and Virginia Biotech, who have people coming from all over to do business in their buildings. We also have recommendations relating to expanding access to business opportunities, supporting existing small businesses, creating a pipeline of employees for future and existing positions at these new jobs that will hopefully be attracting to City Center. There's a section of the plan focused on inclusive housing. And the idea is to increase the number of dwelling units in the downtown to bring people closer to jobs and to transit. This will be one of the most transit-rich parts of our city with 2 BRT lines coming together. The plan proposes having a variety of housing options, ownership and rental, affordable both of those affordable to people at or below 60% of the area median income. We also have, that could include supportive housing, maybe new type of housing products like cooperative housing that we don't have as much in Richmond today. And finally, the plan has recommendations related to creating a thriving environment through clean air, through recommendations like requiring buildings to have to be high performance buildings, to providing access to healthy foods. So one thing that people talk about often is a grocery store. So we have strategy in here to encourage the development of the grocery store and also looking at alternatives. You know, could there be a co-op? Could there also be a food hall as a different type of alternative? Obviously not the same as a grocery store, but another food amenity in the area. And finally, the phasing. This is a draft of the phasing where we're built. Number 1 is the public safety building. Number 2 are 2 surface parking lots that the city owns. Number 3 is essentially the Coliseum and some of the parking associated with it. And then number 4 would be the municipal building, which couldn't really happen until, and then number 5 are the other municipal buildings. 4 and 5 happen a little bit later in the process because we have to figure out the best way to reposition all of the property that the city owns where there's current city offices. All of this we'd want to have requirements for the city-owned property to achieve some equitable development benefits. And so here's a summary of some of those here. As the city works with the private sector to develop the city-owned land. The city should consider including some of these benefits in the development agreements. Not all of them make sense for every single parcel because not every single parcel would have housing, for example. But the idea would be that at least 20% of the units would be affordable to people earning at or below 60% AMI. There could be more, for 60 to 80 as well. Employment, making sure that the projects employ Richmonders as best as they can, and work with the Office of Community Wealth Building to train employees. Having minority business participation in that, creating community wealth, having energy efficiency requirements and site design requirements, and supporting the non-car network and parking and transit, and then also helping address different municipal needs as we've identified. So one thing that I want to talk about is investment. So the city owns about 26 acres of land, like I've said, in this area, and some of it may require public investment to help achieve some of this vision. So to put it in perspective, if you have a house and you go to sell your house and you contract a realtor to help you with it, and the realtor says, hey, you could get $20,000 more for your house if you put $10,000 of repairs in it. It may be that to get some of these, it will require actually to get some of these benefits, that might mean that the city has to put in some financial incentive to do it. So that could be a tax increment finance, a TIF district. It could be reducing the cost of the property in order to cover some of the things that the city wants, which could be public open space, which could be affordable housing, which could be parking. So that's sort of, there's always a little bit of investment that might have to be made in order to see the increase on the return in the end. So the best example I could give was a house, because most of us have some experience in understanding the house part. So the idea is that in 2037, we could have in 2030, a day in the life of 2030, there could be a great main plaza that you go to. If you're visiting the convention center and you go to a concert after your convention that's sponsored by your convention in this big outdoor amphitheater, or it could be a big concert that is that the city's sponsoring. There could be, you could work in City Hall and live right nearby in a co-op, and you have ownership in that building. You could be a scientist working at one of the biotech buildings and roll out of bed every morning, go straight into your lab. That's less of an option now because there's nowhere to live right near the labs. This place could be a place where people are, just how people used to be here in the thousands, 50, 60, 70 years ago. So we're trying to bring people back, and the plan is available on our website. And please provide comments. As I said at the beginning, this is a draft, and so we need your comments and feedback on it. Today we'll do some questions and comments in the meeting. You also have a piece of paper that you can write your comments on. You can go onto SurveyMonkey. Usually in these meetings, we would do breakout meetings so that you can hear everyone's voice, because not everyone's comfortable speaking aloud in front of a lot of people. But we didn't know how people would feel about that with the pandemic and kind of like coming back to in-person stuff. So we're going to do it a little bit more formal than I normally would like. But please provide your questions and thoughts. And with that, let me know. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, Councilperson Robertson arrived, and I would really enjoy having her give a couple of remarks if she would so like. Councilperson, yeah. Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that. And appreciate the presentation. Good evening, everyone.
Isn't it wonderful to be in the presence of people where you can see their faces and their smiles? And some of us still like to wear a mask, and that's good too. I'm glad to see all you. I hope you're healthy. I'm hoping that this pandemic is really over and that we'll all get to a place of even greater comfort as we go through this reopening of Richmond. This plan, for the most part, is in the 6th district, which is the district that I represent. On city council, I've served on city council for 17 years, so needless to say how many plans I have seen in the works for this area. I have asked Marissa, and on many occasions we've talked about this plan, and we are meeting with each council member individually and going through this and getting their feedback. We don't want any surprises from council members at the time that it comes back to us for approval. We want to know what those concerns are now. And likewise, it's very important that we know what your concerns are or your ideas. Sometimes it's not so much concerns, it's the creativity of the people of the city of Richmond seeing this place become a place that you will make it a point of wanting to be in this place at some frequency. And hopefully that's frequent. This is about an opportunity to give every visitor that comes to the city of Richmond or to the Richmond metropolitan area to have this place on their list of places that they want to visit when they're in this region. It is mostly important that the residents of Richmond decide what makes the core of the entire city of Richmond a destination that represents their city. And so I don't want you to be locked into the presentation as much as I want you to allow the presentation to create and stimulate your thoughts as to what needs to be done to make this a core of the city of Richmond that is reflective of your city and what you want to be represented here. When I listen to the plan, and I've listened to it several times, and I've let folk know that I've already made some comments, some changes that I want to see. I'm going to put them in writing and send them to folks so that I won't mess up like I did on another major plan that was done and not have them in writing, so folk know what they are throughout the entire process. But there's a history that goes along with this community that we have an opportunity to recapture. And we have not done well to honor our history that we destroy. And as we go through a rebirth, we miss the opportunity to celebrate what made us rich when we were thriving downtown. And so I remember downtown when it was thriving, and downtown was the anchor for the region. Everybody came downtown, right? So we may not need a Millen Rose and a Tall Hammers and all of those other big retail stores. But there's something that we need that nobody else has. And will make this a destination that folk must want to see. And if it's going to be anywhere in the city of Richmond, it should be here. And so I am very serious when I say to you, I don't want you to be locked in on this plan as if this is it. I want you to use this as an opportunity to stimulate your thinking, to be creative, that this is a destination that, don't have a long sleep hour, that have lots of people on and in this place more hours than not, and that it reflects the city that we want to reflect, and that it has an opportunity and a place where everyone feels like they're welcome in it. So I'm looking forward to the process that we're going to continue to go through. I'm going to follow everybody around every time they're talking about it. And I want to read every comment that comes in. And I want to respond to every comment. And if someone sends in something that I'm really like, what in the world is this? I hope to give you a call because I want to get inside your brain and understand your heart. So I thank you very much and look forward to us creating a real exciting, unique downtown. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Okay. So if anyone has a comment or some great big ideas that you want to share, as Councilperson Robertson invited you to do just now, please jump up and say an idea or write it down if you're shy and turn it in later. You can also type it in the chat and we'll read it out loud. Oh, Jasenia behind you has the Jasenia will bring you the microphone. Oh, you have to turn it on. Yep. And then we'll go to virtual after. Go for it. Yes, could you please say your name first?
Yes, good evening. My name is Emmett Jafari, and I just wanted to give a little background. I want to say thanks for having the public meeting, and certainly want to recognize Council Robertson. As we listen, and I have no alternative to talking but from where I'm from. 60 years ago, I walked with my grandmother where this building stands and along the streets adjacent to this place right here. Since 1859, my family's been here, walking these streets and seeing the same practice and pattern. And not to put a downer on it, because obviously something needs to be done, something needs to be built here. But I would be remiss if I did not point out that the city has a history of mistreating African Americans and their communities. And so when I hear the phrase mixed use, it kind of makes me wonder, what do you mean by mixed use? I don't know. You know, if it's a residential building, are you going to have retail in there as well? But when I look at a continued practice from Jackson Ward, a moment ago, you reflected upon the houses that used to be east of here. No question about it. The Valley, they used to call it the Valley. Maggie Walker attended school down there and everything, but VCU took all of that. All of those were African-American homes and communities. Same thing happened in Navy Hill. Same thing happened in Jackson Ward. The same thing happened in Randolph, which is where my family's from. And so what I'm seeing, what sounds like a good plan, and it very well may be, once we get past the draft portion and iron out some things and get together and work on it as Richmonders together, we can come up with a good plan. But again, I would be remiss if I was to stand here and not see the pattern that is going on. When you say an open park, I understand the concept of an open park like Linear Park, I get that. But when you also say that you're going to have people living in the residences around the park, people who live in a place tend to get territorial. And so how are they going to feel about people coming from the West End or coming from South Side? So these are things that you really can't build into a building. These are things that you're actually going to have to put feet on the ground and make sure that it's all interactive. That whatever is put here, we can't replace Navy Hill. All those things are gone forever. But we can move on from here with something positive that really addresses the pattern that I'm telling you about this city has engaged in consistently since its inception. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to check if anyone is online that wants to ask one before we do one in person. By the way, for people who are online, we have 35 people here in person. I don't see anyone raising their hand, but I do see one one question, is there a geologic limit to building height in this district? I do not know the answer to that question specifically, so I can't answer it. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, let me first
Could you say your
by
name?
identifying myself. My name is Suleiman Forgas. I'm a business owner here in the city of Richmond, and as well as a graduate from the city of Richmond Public Schools. I say that because I heard you all speaking about a potential high school. I'm in agreement with the gentleman who spoke earlier about a continued practice. And so as I was sitting back thinking about the opportunity that we have in front of us, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, especially for this district, is how it's going to affect the residents of that district. Primarily speaking, of the Gilpin Court community. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how, you're talking about, like he said, a diverse community, mixed use development. What does mixed use look like? What does affordable? I was looking at, and I underlined something in the program that you all have here. It talks about, it says, the availability of housing options at all income levels. What does that look like? It's specifically, not very vaguely. The secondary part of that was about what does opportunity look like for small and minority business? What does that look like? Because I am a small business owner here in the city of Richmond, and I am tasked with hopefully attempting to employ people. One of the things that I have consistently seen you all bring these, I struggle. I'm struggling right now because you all bring these grandiose plans here to the city of Richmond residents in hopes of creating some facet of economic development and increase. And I don't see the city of Richmond residents having an opportunity to actively participate in them. I see contractors coming, being awarded bids from outside of the city of Richmond. I see very little opportunity for the residents of the city of Richmond. Just with the Navy, I attended quite a few of the Navy Hill meetings, and I never heard about the allocation of funds for the city of Richmond's public school system. See, anything that is going to cause the city of Richmond to spend money at an enormous amount or bond money at an enormous amount, where is the return for the residents for the city of Richmond? That is my primary concern. You talked about this high school potentially being built. Why not a technical or trade school? Our technical center, the city of Richmond's technical center, is sitting over there almost rotting. The residents of the city of Richmond do not have an opportunity to learn trades. These students, there are multiple ways of learning. And what we have found out is that a lot of the city of Richmond residents learn differently. Everyone is not college material, right? And these jobs that you're speaking of, in terms of building new diverse populations and structures, the HVAC, the carpenter, the electrician, none of our students in the city of Richmond public school system have had the opportunity to be awarded these types of things that are going to help them benefit in the process of the development and take ownership of the development of their city. So these are things that I would like to see. How are we as persons who are creating these grandiose plans allow the city of Richmond residents to take an active part in their own upbringing, uprising, if you will? I mean, it's fine to have mixed-use development and a lot of different plans. But if the residents are not actively taking a part in it, how do they take ownership of it? How do they become proud of it? You know,
Absolutely.
I'm going to part with that.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Very much. I have someone, Micah White.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. I think I just want to ask the specific question to the sentiment that the two first brothers spoke about. I remember with the Navy Hill project, and first let me say I'm here in representation of myself as well as the Metropolitan Business League. I'm the Business Development Manager of the Metropolitan Business League. Is there anything currently in the plan that does address some level of reconciliation with the systemic issues that have hurt the neighborhoods as it pertains to Blacks and African Americans? And also my second part of that question, is there anything in the percentage-based process that has to be given towards small women and minority businesses as it pertains to procurement for the development, or has that been discussed yet?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White. The plan proposes some equitable development benefits, which is kind of our term for what the city would get in selling its property or getting it redeveloped. And so a couple of them relate to having targets for minority business, enterprise participation in construction, and then also in consultants, contractors, developers, also having tenants in their office space. So I would invite, that's page 50 of the plan. As I said, it's draft. So I would invite folks to add upon it, look at it, make it better, make it ours, make it yours. Because this is, like Councilperson Robertson's comments, a draft, and we'd love to get your ideas to make it way better and sing and meet the vision of different peoples.
Thank you.
I'm going to grab something from the chat. Will, do you see one from the chat? It's kind of hard to see. Let's see. Yeah. So someone said, would you speak more about decking over I-95 and rejoining Jackson Ward? So one of the big moves of the city master plan, Richmond 300, is to reconnect Jackson Ward by building over the highway. This is something that's been done across the country. People have built on top of highways. In fact, it was done in our city. Kanawha Park and Williams Mullen were both built over the downtown expressway. So we are kind of undertaking an effort to, the first step in that is this idea of a feasibility study, seeing what is possible and where, between which streets, could it have open space, could it have buildings? So that's kind of like trying to understand the realm of possibility for it, as well as having a community-led process through that analysis. All right, someone here had a comment, Jasenia, over here. There we go. So please state your name.
Dan Lawrence, I live in Ginter Park. Came to the city in the 70s as a VCU student, renting rooms in the Fan, basements in Churchill, moving to Bellevue, and then a fixer-upper in Churchill, or in Ginter Park, next to Efficiency and one-bedroom apartments on Chamberlain. So I feel invested in the community. I love this vision of a green space downtown. It really needs it. Couple of concerns. The first one that was brought up with the school. I love the idea of the tech center moving here, and or perhaps Open High, which is just in a rundown building downtown and has the same kind of mission. I think otherwise the community is well set where it is. So rather than a new school, let's consider bringing those two if it meets with the school board's interest. I like that concept. Having rented those basement apartments in Churchill, there were two cultures. There were the owners renovating houses, and then there were the necessary tenants to pay for the renovations. So when you say mixed use, I think about Navy Hill, where they talked about high-end, low-income, and high-end. They don't mix well. You really need a true mixed community, which I feel like you're putting that into your vision. I hear more details in your vision than I've ever heard in these projects, which is good. The third concern is just like the Freeway 95 tore through a vibrant community, tearing down all these buildings, well, then you've got the expenses of rebuilding them in a city that's tight on finances. So, that's the detail that I find the most difficult to deal with. But I think you're going the right way with this, and I was very impressed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Let's see. Have you included in the plan adequate parking facilities for bicycles, i.e. bicycle racks on the street, but also bicycle garages? The plan, I don't think addresses bike parking specifically. And that's because our zoning ordinance addresses bike parking requirements for multifamily buildings. I'm not sure if it does for office, but that's something that we can explore some more as well. We have a question in the building.
Hi, this is Jennifer Wampler. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the parking garages? I think it was phase 2, where are you replacing those parking garages because you're providing the subterranean parking, or are you redeveloping? Just, can you talk about parking?
So phase 2, and I will pull up that diagram on the screen so everyone can see it. Okay. Phase 2 are these two parcels over here. One of them's on Broad and the other one's on Grace. I wouldn't get too concerned about the phasing just yet because some of that might change a little bit. But in summary, the one at Broad, right across from the convention center, is a surface parking lot. So I would imagine that the redevelopment of any of those would include parking, right? We have parking requirements in our zoning ordinance, but even if we didn't, developers would still build parking because they know that people need parking to get around, and their tenants want it, and their banks usually want it as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it included parking. If not by the zoning ordinance, it would be a bank requirement or a developer requirement to get a tenant. With the other one that's across from the Carpenter Theater, that property has a surface parking lot and a very old parking structure that only the first floor is viable for parking cars, because the other levels are accessed via a really tight helix, a really tight spiral, and our modern cars don't fit in the spiral ramp. So it's not like that whole building is used for parking. The plan, that is an old building with a really cool facade, and the plan does suggest that we preserve that facade and the redevelopment of that parcel. Let me see if there's one on the chat that I might have missed. Adrian Luxmore asks, why is affordable housing limited to only 20% at 60% AMI? Can we not have more at lower income? That is certainly a suggestion that I invite you to make on the plan. So please do. Registered there, yes.
It worked. Oh, it does work. My name is Jason Morris. I wanted to question why you have bike facilities on Lee and Clay and 6, but you're not doing anything with Marshall Street. Marshall Street seems like a good street to have bike facilities on, as well as 7th through 10th. I don't know if you're having right-of-way issues. It seems like something that would be pretty, if you're redesigning the whole area, it seems like something a modern downtown should have. And also, why not just go ahead and close Clay and 6 to cars? Clay seems like a street that goes nowhere. And 6th Street, if you're going to tear down all that and do all that, why not just close it to cars?
The bike facilities, 5th and 7th are major roads that connect to our highways, and so they're pretty intense car roads. And so talking to our transportation engineers, they like having it on less intense car roads. 8th and 9th are proposed as our major transit corridors. So kind of for the same reason, that's why there's no bike lanes proposed for there. That doesn't mean that bikes can't travel on those roads, obviously. There is and so that's part of the reason why we chose those, but I invite you, I registered your comment here, and so Emily's writing it down, so we'll add that to the list along with everyone else's comments that you guys have made, have not gone unheard. In terms of closing Clay down for, like, permanently for cars, this is kind of a debate among urban planning people, but I'm of the impression that it's good to allow cars on streets and be able to close them, because there's a lot of deliveries that need to be made and just like everyday stuff that might want to happen on those streets. And so it's nice to be able to have the flexibility to be able to do both. It is a debate in urban planning worlds. So that is, we've heard your comment on that one as well. There we go. So next question, anyone, I'll do the chat. Let's see. Oh, if you're on the phone, you have to press *6 to unmute. Thank you, Will. So if you are on the phone and would like to say something, we have several people joining on the phone. You have to press *6 to unmute, and then you'll just talk. And we'll see. Okay. Okay, back on the chat.
This is Christine Williams. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Ms.
Okay.
Williams.
I hope it's okay. Yeah, I had a question about that town. That area is pretty far from the banks that are down the hill, and it probably should have like a mini post office as well if there are going to be that many people up in there.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Williams.
Okay.
Yes, we'll add that to our list.
They could be very small. It doesn't have to be huge, but
Yes. Great. Thank you. From the chat, we have Stephanie said, I would like more clarification on how robust the connection between Main Street Station and the transit hub will be. Also, will the Brook Road bike lane extend into downtown? Finally, will this plan help accelerate the plans for a First Street Bridge and closing of the 64 exit that feeds the Gilpin Court to make the area more connected to downtown? So I think I need to understand a little bit more about what the meaning of how robust the connection between Main Street Station and the transit hub will be. We have the BRT that connects them already, and so that's one way that's really strong. Obviously, any improved kind of pedestrian urban realm improvements would also help there. The Brook Road bike lane, what comes up to Lee Street, and we're proposing bicycle facilities on Lee Street, so that would connect over. And then I've already spoken about the First Street, the bridge connecting Jackson Ward. Any comments here? Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Will, and thank you very much for this presentation. It's inspiring. I think the questions that have been asked are extremely appropriate. I have two that are probably more of a nuisance. We have no bus transfer center, and we keep talking about how that might happen and where it might be. Is there any possibility to include the bus transfer center in this site?
So, the plan right now proposes that the bus transfers would happen at street level on 8th and 9th, kind of with much better bus shelters than what are there now, and that there would be restrooms, public restrooms within a public building nearby. The bus system is becoming better and more frequent, and one of the big goals of the bus system is to become more frequent, and when buses come, and when buses are coming more frequent, then bus transfers can happen in many places throughout the system, not just like pulsed, which is a transit term, pulsed into one location.
And second question, I believe in the past for very large venues, the convention center has maybe moved programs over into the Coliseum for when there was a significant group of people coming. Is there any idea of how to continue to get those larger programs coming to the convention center without having a larger venue to put them in?
So the plan proposes that the large outdoor, the signature open space could also be programmed by the convention center, so that conventions that come to the convention center could use that space as an extension of their convention. So yes, and the plan also proposes that the hotel that would be right near there would have a bridge connecting to the convention center, so that then convention goers could come from the convention through the lobby of the hotel and out into the big open space. And that reminds me, I responded to some of your questions, but then some other ideas that people had, I didn't like go back and forth, and I'm trying, I don't want to be responsible only to some people. There was ideas about combining open with other high schools to be here. That's certainly a possibility, and we wrote that down, so we'll kind of continue to push that idea forward. And then the idea of like, what is mixed use? Certainly that could be retail on the ground floor of a residential building. And we definitely envision this being a place for a lot of Richmonders, you know, and that's part of why we have the low income housing provision in there. And some things that I've heard some people say, not here, is that we should have a certain percentage allocated to people earning 60 to 80% of the area median income. So you hit a little bit higher band. So that could be 10% there to that group. And then you could also have some of those also be for the 60 to 80 band. This was a comment made at council, making sure that there's home ownership options for that group, right? Because they're the ones who are often having the hardest time finding home ownership opportunities throughout the city. There's other things that I missed because I was going back and forth. In the chat, Brian Ennis said, outdoor Coliseum space. What can be done to ensure buildings are tall enough to provide shade in this space? Or what other small structures can be built to provide shade? Without enough proper planning on this aspect, it will be a wasteland during the day as things get hotter and hotter. Totally agree. We want to make sure that people have comfortable places to be in our open space, and that will go into the planning for this area, especially as we have more and more hot days. Does anyone in the call want to raise their hand and ask a question using the hand raise function? Okay. Or if you're calling in, it's *6 to unmute. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please state your name.
My name is Paula Margolis. I do not live in the city of Richmond, but I worked there in the city of Richmond for 27 years. And my question is about installing solar and other energy saving technologies into these buildings.
Thank you for your question. There's a similar question in the chat, so from John Hamilton. The plan right now, and this can be a comment that you add, is to require projects that are on city-owned land to achieve the equivalent of LEED Gold certification, which is a high-performance building rating system. So that could include renewable energies, but the plan currently doesn't have anything specific about renewable energy. So that is a comment that we will take into account. One thing to just consider as we all think about the different things we want people to do with the land. If we're selling a piece of property and we say we want it to have affordable housing and open space and be high performing building with solar panels, you may not get as much money for the land, right? Because all of those things are extra costs on the base development. So it's just thinking about what that ends up meaning when you actually go get your purchase price. It will be in a competitive market. So if you're saying these are all the things we want and one developer can do it and also pay you for the land, great. But it could mean that you get a little bit less. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brandon Blair. Wanted to ask, can you elaborate on the retail and entertainment? I feel like it's a lot of people down there, and then you mentioned ground floor retail, but I don't feel like that's sufficient for thousands of people living in a city center. I didn't see any mentions of a Target or Walmart, just big box retail that I think kind of grounds a city and like makes it a destination outside of kind of like your city center or the people that are visiting, because currently there's nowhere for anyone in the city to buy if you're on this side of the river, to shop at a Target, to shop at Walmart, to shop at a grocery store, to shop at any place. And I feel like a downtown area should have a good mix of your big box to make things affordable for everybody that kind of lives in that area. So if you can kind of expand on like what the entertainment, well, retail portion of it is. And then I also feel like the entertainment piece, the kind of the big elephant in the room is that there's no arena there. Because if you have a premier hotel, if you have all these kind of nice things, why are the people there? Like it feels like we're trying to do a development without something that we said we didn't want, but we kind of actually need. So if you can elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'll take that part first. And I would say that there's a lot of people who are here in our downtown, but they just don't really stay. So we have tens of thousands of people who work at VCU Health. We have the biotech park that also employs a lot of people. We have the state government that employs tens of thousands of people. We have the convention center that brings people here. We have Jackson Ward, which is a growing community that, you know, has parcels getting redeveloped. So you have Monroe Ward where there's parcels getting redeveloped. So there's a lot that's kind of happening right around the edges of it. And what we can do with the center is have like people stay here and do something here. And one of those things we'll design it awesomely, is that signature open space that's connected to the rest of the community by smaller open spaces that kind of draw you in. If you think about it, if you've been to Boston, there's Boston Common. If you've been to Manhattan, there's Bryant Park. If you've been to Philadelphia, there's Rittenhouse Square. They are destinations in and of themselves. People just go only to that open space. And so that ends up being a big draw when it's done correctly. The other question you had was related to retail. Retail follows rooftops. As you know, as I shared earlier in the presentation, there were about 28,000 people who used to live down here. And at that time, there was a lot of retail here. And then a lot of those people left because they wanted to or because they were forced out. And then we lost a lot of retail. And even though downtown has added a lot of population in the recent past decade, there's still a lot of vacancy on Broad Street. So we need more people living here, and then you'll start to see some of the retail come as well. We definitely, grocery store or any kind of retail would be totally welcome here. Also thinking that the retail environment is shifting and the way that people buy groceries and the way that people buy clothes is totally different than what it used to be like 15, 20 years ago. So absolutely we would want retail and entertainment, and the plan doesn't say that those things can't happen. But in order to get the retail, we need more people living here. Okay, there's a question online, so I'm going to do that real quick. Are there plans for running cycle tracks, including connections to other sections of the city? A cycle track is where you have like, it's what's on Franklin Street and on First, where you have two bike lanes going in either direction next to bollards, next to traffic. And the plan doesn't specifically say what kind of bike facility would be on any of the roads, so a cycle track would totally be possible. It just doesn't go into that detail.
Yes, John Luckbill, and I guess comment slash opportunity slash question, but the Fall Line Trail currently is proposed to go down First and Third Streets and go primarily through Jackson Ward. Would it make sense to come through City Center and connect down, and then you'd have the option of going across either the Manchester Bridge or the Potterfield Bridge, but creating a linear park like what you're proposing in City Center, but why not connect it with our big, grand, wet Central Park, which is our riverfront? So why not use the Fall Line Trail as the way to do that? And if the traffic engineers have problems with, it wouldn't be a bike lane, it would be a separated from the road trail.
Right.
And so that then eliminates some of that concern. And we certainly have some opportunities, trails like this with linear green space work and become destinations of themselves, like you have said. And so why not have that connection to the river?
That's a great comment, and I know that different folks in this room were like, I think Louise Lockett, Gordon, and yourself, I think we're involved in the Fall Line Trail alignment. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but whoever was, people sat around a room and figured out where the Fall Line Trail should go. So I don't want to like step on their toes too much, but I don't think it's a bad idea to bring the Fall Line through here. It could be a really good connector and bring kind of a different type of mode and tourism attraction to the downtown. If you guys have been to Indianapolis, they have this really awesome thing called the Cultural Trail, and it's phenomenal. And just like look up pictures of it. That's what the Fall Line Trail could be. And that's what it could be if it kind of comes through, hits Jackson Ward, and then comes to downtown and goes south. That is a potential. And so we'll write it down as an edit to the plan. And this,
Christine Williams again.
Yes.
One quick question. You mentioned the Valentine and the John Marshall House. Are they going to be okay, or what's the status on those?
So we propose that those stay exactly the way they are. If
Okay.
anything, and they have been part of the conversations, and if anything, they would hopefully get more visitors and more attention if more people are coming to this part of town.
The other suggestion, have they considered like green roofs for some of the buildings that are adaptable for that?
That is not specifically spelled out as a specific type of green building practice, but it could be something that is included as part of a LEED Gold certification process.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So someone in the chat said, will there be detailed plans like this for other areas of the city, or is this the only immediate priority for development? There are many priorities for different parts of the city, and I invite you to look at Richmond 300, the master plan for the city. Just Google Richmond City Master Plan, and you should find it. There's a lot of many priorities, mainly for lots of different parts of the city. So this is not the only area. This area has been identified by council and by multiple plans as an area needing further study. And so that's why we are where we are today. Other comments? Yep.
Sorry to be a mic hog. This is more so of a comment. Can we please keep like density as high as like the city allows? I feel like cities should be kind of brim to the capacity. It's cool to see a cool skyline as you kind of drive by Richmond. And then with that also, can we have some inspiring architecture that kind of just grabs people and kind of makes them want to come to the city? Because I feel like developments here lately have been pretty drab and pretty kind of a cookie cutter and not really conducive to like people wanting to go see what that is. If we can just kind of keep those things in mind as we kind of develop this plan, that's all.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. We will write them down as well. John Hamilton said, is it possible to include the ability to host farmers markets, perhaps a beer hall featuring local breweries? That is totally possible, and we'll write that down as comments. I don't think the plan as presented doesn't preclude either one of those things from happening. Yes, sir.
And thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Joseph Boatwright. I'm a native of Navy Hill and semi-retired in the Jackson Ward area right now. Finished Maggie Walker, MCV, et cetera, et cetera. So been here, done that. And the reason why I wanted to comment was that I sort of feel like I'm at the same spot that I was when I was listening to my parents talk about Richmond back in the day. You know, that we really haven't moved much since then. They call it the 1-2 punch. My father said, well, they became second. There was, capital of the Confederacy, got burnt. Then they turned around and shot themselves in the foot by building 95 straight through the city and just completely lost any identity that the city had through the years. And if you think of Williamsburg, Virginia Beach, Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, I can go right on. There's an image that comes up that everybody would wear a same sweatshirt on and be proud of. Is there a sweatshirt that all of us would wear in this to walk out here and be proud of with Richmond? I just think that's really what's missing in all of this. And with all due respect to your presentation, when you talked about the neighborhoods, I really feel like that's still lowballing the center of the city. Yes, we can have a nice Bryan Park or a Forest Hill neighborhood, but this is the center of the city. And they should build off of whatever is more grandiose within the city, that when everybody says Richmond, that they all chime into. Like you talk about the river city. Where's the river in this? You know, like someone was mentioning. You know, it's just that identity. Not just the buildings are fine. People will come and go through the buildings like they do with the suburbs and whatnot, and it'll do okay. But I just think not having that true identity that everyone can chime into is the real opportunity here, and the thing that we really need to address for now and historically and in the future for this city that is missing and is a challenge for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. This is a great opportunity for establishing that identity. And I think that goes back to Councilperson Robertson's opening or closing remarks after the presentation. So let's keep talking and get to that place. That's why we're having these meetings. The plan that you guys are looking at was created by the planning department after 2 rounds of surveys and community stakeholder meetings, but it's still not there yet. It's not final. We need more voices to like help us find the thing that people get around. So thank you very much, and let's keep talking. There's a comment about, have you given thought to electric car charging stations throughout the city? The master plan has recommendations about electric car charging stations. It's in goal 10. I can't remember the exact strategy, but yes. Is there another comment in here? Okay. With this many residents projected, should there also be an elementary school? Says Chip Couts. Before the electric car charging was Anita Wade. Yes, I guess an elementary school maybe could, potentially. Elementary schools have more like outdoor requirements, but than a high school might, than a like STEM focused high school or technical focused high school might. So that's just one thing to consider. Tanya Washington raised her hand. And I'm going to do about 10 more minutes because then we'll be at 7:45. Tanya, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself. All right, Tanya, I will come back in a moment. Chris Tucker says, how long will this project be paid for and how long will it take? I also think that the school should be a technical school, but I don't know how it will happen when the school board can't get George Wythe High School built. I think we still need a multi-purpose sports center, but not as big as the Coliseum. In response to the question about how long will it take and how it will be paid for, some of it will be paid for by private development, and some of it, like the public open space, may need a public financing to make it happen. But one thing to think about with that house metaphor is that if you have the big public open space, then the development is stronger and can generate more tax revenue. And how long will it take? It'll take several years. It's not an overnight thing. Building big buildings and going through public processes to sell city-owned land takes some time. I can't give an exact date. Tanya, are you able to unmute? Okay. We'll do a few more questions. Do we have anyone? Oh, there's one over there.
On the electric car charging, public has the, on Carytown, the car charging inside in their parking deck. So it could be incorporated in that and not have to take outdoor space.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Chris Tucker asked, will Virginia Union University be included in this project as well? We have them listed as a stakeholder in the diverse economy section. I guess I would need more information from you, Mr. Tucker, if you're still on the line, about what you mean by included in this project. If you had more ideas, please email them to us or fill out the online survey. Other questions? Okay. We're going to go about 7 more minutes. Rebecca Costanzo said, where could mom and pop businesses sell their wares or food trucks park? Do the local zoning ordinances allow people to see on the street? Are there dedicated spaces within this plan? The plan is still a little bit high level, so there's no specific dedicated spaces for like food trucks to park. However, that could be something that is included in the public open space design as you're thinking about like, hey, maybe this one block of the smaller open space is the place where food trucks go, and there could be tie-ins so that the food trucks get electricity without having to have their generators blaring. There are recommendations in the plan about incorporating small businesses into the area, so that kind of gets to the small mom and pop areas as well. Do the local zoning ordinances allow people to see on the street? I think that is getting to the idea that like buildings face the street and you can see in and out, you know, from building to the street. It goes back to that old Jane Jacobs eyes on the street urban planning theory. And yes, the zoning ordinance does have different streets, priority street and commercial street frontage. that can be applied to certain parts of this area, and we would propose that to make sure that that happens on certain sides of streets. Okay. What? Oh, one more question. Go ahead.
Sorry, they're all kind of coming to my head. Is there an iteration of the plan that possibly includes a stadium, or are we just assuming that Henrico's plan is going to go through without any issue?
That is, no, not at this time. It does not include a stadium. Yeah, but at this time, it does not include a stadium. What's the opportunity for an intermodal transportation hub and also to include your local and interstate transportation carriers to the table for advice on any type of transportation needs to draw more people to the inner city? Our intermodal transportation hub has been kind of, for a while, been talked about being Main Street Station, because that's where we have high-speed rail and regular rail, or high-speed rail hopefully coming, and regular rail, passenger rail, and then also the BRT, and that's where Megabus and Bolt Bus also have drop-offs. So we kind of see that as being an intermodal transportation hub. In research that one of my planners did looking at intermodal transportation hubs across the country in similar sized cities, usually those are kind of like right next to the downtown, not necessarily in the heart of the downtown. So Main Street Station is a good logical space for that. Question in this room? Okay, 3 more minutes and then we will adjourn. Downtown, Tanya Washington. Oh, great. I'm happy you wrote your comment in the chat. Downtown was jubilant with clothing stores and places to eat. Will that be coming back? Tanya, that is our hope, that with lots of more people living here, with more vibrancy, we will get back to that place. And then she also asked, is there going to be another Coliseum? I think I addressed that with the gentleman's comment earlier. We are not proposing that in this plan. Anita Wade asks, is there a full list of all historic buildings within the plan, and does it include historic churches? Anita, no, there is not a full list of every single historic building within this area in the plan, but the plan does have a map that shows the historic boundaries in the area and also highlights some of the historic assets. But I would direct you to look at the National Register districts for those areas, because that has the real comprehensive list for all historic assets. A couple more minutes. And John J. Morgan just typed in Main Street Station is not suitable because of poor traffic issues. So going back to the transportation hub comment. And then Robin just chimed in, will the plan include schools? Yes, right now the plan has an idea of having a technical, like STEM type focused high school. We've gotten some comments in the meeting today to make that different or better. We've also gotten comments about an elementary school potentially. So any more comments from this group? Thank you so much for coming and being part of this hybrid meeting that I have never done before. And thank you to the Convention Center for hosting us and providing us this technical ability. I'm not sure how we're going to replicate it in other locations, but we're very grateful to the Convention Center, to Councilperson Robertson for your leadership in this endeavor. We really look forward to working with every single person on the phone, on MS Teams, in this room, listening to the recording to help us make an even better plan. So thank you very much and have a nice night.